We welcome you into the first episode of Talking Blizz with Joey Bonadonna. This first episode, we're joined by Blizzard offensive lineman Tyrell Thompson. Tyrell, how we doing? Welcome to the show.
Doing great, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we are in the first episode. This is week one, fresh out of camp. First game this week against the Frisco Fighters at the Resch Center, 3:05 on Sunday. Obviously a big game, first game of the year, a tough opponent. But let's first talk about how this camp has gone for the Blizzard. Obviously last year, not making the playoffs, but still some very exciting stuff for the organization. Just kind of talk about how this this camp has gone for you guys, especially being up in Michigan Tech.
Yeah, that was definitely something that, you know, a lot of guys were excited about coming into camp, but weren't quite ready for, as in like the weather and stuff like that. You know, we have a lot of guys that's from down south and not used to, you know, the snow as it is. Then you go up to the UP and the highest point in the country and, you know, just all the snow and the ice and stuff. That was kind of good for different guys to see. But the experience overall, Michigan Tech was great. You know, their facilities, athletic department, everything was great. The cabins we stayed in, Northwind Adventure, you know, they did amazing hosting us, and the local restaurants that hosted us were just amazing, and it really brought us closer together. You know, usually camp, you see a lot of, you know, guys fighting, like physically fighting and stuff like that, but we didn't have any of that. This camp, you know, we became brothers, and that's definitely important with a tough opponent week one. Yeah,
I mean, seeing just stuff on social media, between you guys got to go to the Michigan Tech hockey game, seemed like a lot of guys enjoyed that. Yeah, just being together, not necessarily in Green Bay, but kind of getting away from the city a little bit, going up north, going up to the UP, and yeah, it looked like a great experience. Overall, your offensive line returns a lot of the starters from last year. A couple of guys brought in through trades and free agency. And we'll talk about your transition from defensive line to offensive line a little bit, but what's that offensive line looking like this year? You guys excited about that group?
Definitely excited. I would just say just watch on Sunday, you know, when it's time for kickoff and offense goes on the field. You'll notice that we're a lot different this year. You know, we have a really tough group. You know, we have 6 O-linemen right now, so either one, you know, any of the guys that dress on Sunday are going to go out and make holes for our running back and give our quarterback time to throw the ball.
The 3 starters, particularly that came back from last year, yourself, A.J. Wilson, and then Zach Hill, those guys at some point last year started to gel once we started to see that consistency of guys up front. And what do you guys feel about the cohesiveness and the chemistry of that group up front coming back for another year?
Yeah, so at one point, I think it was all 3 of us. It was one of our first games as the offensive lineman, and then I know AJ came in late in the season. I switched to offense late in the season, and then Zach, you know, started coming on more late in the season. So during that time, we were really kind of just getting a good feel for each other. And then this offseason, we kept in touch with each other, you know, checking on each other and stuff like that. And that helped going into camp because it was like we didn't miss a beat going into camp. And then bringing in the new guys, you know, we got MJ, D-Britt, and Trent, and bringing in those 3 guys, they just added to us because they, you know, feel us more to, you know, keep competing. And they're also really good football players as well. So it's good to have everyone that we have.
And, yeah, it's definitely a key point to watch, seeing all those guys come back, plus the added talent, seeing how those rotations work out, seeing who's going to be out there. But definitely a great group of guys, especially those first 3 that we got to see last year. You know, just great personalities and great guys to talk to as well.
Right.
And we'll swing now, the spotlight now here on the Tyrell Thompson story. We obviously, with this new podcast, we are going to get to not only know the team, but we're going to get to know the players as well. So in this first episode, we're going to get a chance to talk to Tyrell Thompson. Tyrell, you kind of mentioned a lot of these guys are on this team are from the South, and playing up in Green Bay is a little bit different. Yourself, you're from Texas, right?
Yes.
So kind of just talk about growing up in Texas. Obviously, football is huge down in Texas, particularly in high school. What was that experience like for you?
So to start, like way back, I was born in Florida, born in Tampa, Florida, and my dad was in the Army, so we moved like constantly, like every 2 or 3 years, and then we kind of just really settled in Texas when I became a freshman in high school, and at first, didn't play football, didn't like football, like I loved basketball. That was thought what I was going to do, and so I did. Football and basketball all the way up until my junior year. And then my junior year, my coach was like, you're a 3-star football player and you're a no-star basketball player. And at the time, I was like 6'2", probably like 230. And he was like, I'm just being honest with you, you're not going to go D1 to play basketball, but you can play football. And so I started thinking, I was just like, man, I really love basketball, but I'm over here listening to my coach thinking, I can actually be a good football player. And so I decided to leave basketball alone and focused on football, and I ended up becoming a great defensive end in the state of Texas. And like you said, football is huge there. So talking like University of Texas, Texas A&M, UTSA, all these different schools are coming in to recruit me, and I enjoyed it. I loved it. The only thing is I didn't take care of my business in the classroom, and so I had all these offers, but couldn't go anywhere because of my grades in the classroom. And so at the time, I could have went Division II, but I knew I wasn't a Division II athlete. And so I went to junior college. I went to Trinity Valley Community College, had a great career there, was All-American, All-Region, all conference, all that stuff. Did really good on the field, but was still lacking in the classroom. And so I always tell people, like, Alabama, wanted to offer me, like all these different schools, top schools wanted to offer me, but I didn't have the grades to go. And so in 2017, in like January, I left Trinity Valley, went back home, and I was just stuck, confused, and not know, what to do, what my next move going to be. And so I was working at Chick-fil-A, and I was working in the back one day, and my manager comes to me, and he's like, what time do you get off today? And I'm like, 2. This is like 12. And he was like, well, these coaches want to talk to you. And so I look out, and like I see like a purple tee. And so I went, kind of jumping forward, I went to Charleston State. So that's who was there looking for me. And so when I first saw them, I was just thinking, oh, they just stopped by, trying to recruit the high school, not actually thinking this is summertime during the dead period. So I was like wondering why they were there. And then I got off at 2. They stayed from 12 to 2 to wait till I got off, and they talked to me. And I think this was like on a Thursday, and I went to go visit campus that Saturday, and then that next Monday I was enrolling in classes on campus. And so like I always tell that story because I was stuck for a while, didn't know what was coming, and then Tarleton came and gave me another chance to be who I was. And I went to Tarleton and had a great 2 years there. Again, all conference, all American, 2-time team captain there, and really helped change that program around. When I was there, we were Division II, and now they're Division I. They play in the WAC conference. And so just going back and seeing, the growth in the school and the athletic department and football program, and knowing I had a part of that is what really kind of humbles me and lets me know that, I left my mark there, at that school. And then as far as, getting here to Green Bay, I left college in 2018, went undrafted to the LA Rams in 2019, played there throughout camp, ended up getting cut, and then I went to the XFL back in 2020 when it was around.
Yeah. And
I played for the Dallas Renegades, and then COVID happened, of course. And so COVID happened, and then 2021 when things were kind of starting back up, Frisco, who we play this week, was actually coming in to the IFL. They were supposed to start in 2020, but COVID, of course. And so their defensive line coach hit me up and was like, I want you to come play for us. It's down the street. You can be a Texas guy to come play. So I went out and tried out, made the team, played with them in 2021, and then re-signed with them again in 2022 early, and then went to training camp. We had a lot of good players on the team, and the guy who was in front of me, like he plays for them now, Jacoby Henderson, number 77. He's a really good athlete.
Yeah.
And, not knocking anything from myself, but I know that there's things that he can do that I just couldn't do. And so I talked to Coach Back, and he was like, well, Green Bay wants you. And so I was like, well, this is a sign because Coach Roberson, and he'll tell you, was trying to get me here since 2019. And I kept telling him, no, like, I'm not going to Green Bay. I'm not leaving Texas. Just did not want to come. But then this time I was like, okay, there's a reason why Green Bay keeps popping up, on my radar. And so I just gave it a chance, and I came out here last March and ended up really liking it, really loved the city. The fans are amazing. And that's what kind of promoted me to sign back, this season for 2023 because I know what I have here.
And obviously, making that switch up from Texas but coming up to Green Bay, you also had a big switch last year. You talked about playing defensive line. At some point in the middle of the year, Coach wants you to switch over to offensive line. And I think we talked about this on the coach's show last year. You had never played offensive line.
Yeah.
And sometimes you think about it going back to high school, a few guys that play both ways and, kind of get that a little bit of that experience. You had no experience on the offensive line.
So when I was in high school as a senior, they finally let me play both ways because I was asking for a long time. And they're like, no, just focus on defense. But my senior year, I kind of did everything. I ran down on kickoff return, punt return. I played defense tackle, and then kind of halfway through the season, they were like, we need a tight end. So I was like, okay, I can go catch. And so I was a catching tight end, never blocked, and then I played fullback. So fullback was the closest I became to an offensive lineman, but it's still a lot different. And last year, O-line was struggling a little bit, and I just went to coach and was like, I think I can do this. Let me get a chance. And so we played around in practice with it, and then I was just off to the side, kind of snapping. And he was like, let me see you do it, moving around a little bit. And so I did it, and then we played Quad Cities that week in Quad Cities, and that was a rough game if you remember that one.
Yeah.
And so the next week I was like, Coach, I really want to play O-line. I want to help the team out. And so we played Bismarck the next week in Bismarck, and we had a great game. Offense had a great game. The O-line did really good. And I don't know if Jack got sacked at all that game or, came close to it. But that was a whole new, brand new O-line, and, that's what really made it more fun, going to play O-line and being a defensive lineman at heart. I know what they're going to do. And so I use that to my advantage to, if I do this or if O-line did this to me, how would I counter it? And so I kind of think the way that they're thinking, but playing offensive line. So it really gives me an advantage.
I think one of those moments that I kind of like getting to watch that matchup was when we were down in Frisco, down in Texas, and you were at offensive line going against some of those guys that you mentioned. Say Coven Henderson, J.D. Griggs was another guy. And you're going head-to-head with these guys, and it kind of came full circle a little bit. Obviously, didn't come out with a win in that one,
right,
but that was a full circle. You were back home playing offensive line, and that was that sign that you talked about. And I think I texted you some point over the offseason. It's like, is it going back to both ways, going back to defense? And he's like, no, it's full in on offensive line this year. So, a true testament to how quickly that turnaround was. You mentioned back in high school you kind of were an everything guy, and you bring that to this franchise and are kind of can do anything.
Right.
And obviously that's a big asset to have
for sure
for a guy like yourself. Now we jump forward into this season. Kind of got to talk about the offensive line a little bit, but this week 1 game against Frisco. It was a matchup last year, had 2 games. You lost both of them. The one at home was came down to that walk-off field goal. The other one down in Texas, that was the one that eliminated you guys from playoff contention. So obviously this is not only for yourself, but for this organization, for this franchise, it's a decent rivalry.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Especially being, I believe they're still in the Eastern Conference this year. So that's when you're probably going to be seeing a lot of. Kind of talk about that matchup and what this means for you guys week 1.
Yeah, it's definitely something that, obviously personally, I take, good pride in playing Frisco just because they're from Texas and they're the team that, traded me, So, personally I have my own, reasons against Frisco, but I remember when the schedule first came out and I saw that first game with Frisco and I was like, of course, why not? But I think it's a great great way to open the season. They're going to have great players, great coaches, but we have great players and great coaches. So this little rivalry that, has come about that, started since they came into the league. I remember when I was in Frisco and Green Bay came down, we almost lost that game to Green Bay just because you can never count out, the Blizzard. And now being here, it's definitely going to be a fun one on Sunday for sure.
And I think definitely over the last couple of years, ever since COVID, you look at this team and how close they've come in some of these games.
Right.
That Frisco game last year, looked like it was going to be the mass game this year.
Right.
Games that go into the fourth quarter where it's a close game, Blizzard just can't come out with the win. But obviously it's so close there, and you guys kind of retain a little bit of the core from last year with, we just talked about it a little bit before, the offensive line, stud DBs, stud receivers, and just trying to fill it out and get that last stretch over the goal line. Right. And get the win. So obviously it's close. It is very close, and a lot of those games you just mentioned are a big point of that.
Right.
And ultimately, this is a big stretch to start the season.
Right.
3 very big conference rivals in your first 3 games, but obviously, as Coach Roberson would say, it's one game, it's one day, 1 week at a time, and you're looking at week 1 with Frisco. And obviously, the home opener, it's going to be the whiteout. It'll be a great atmosphere always. The one last year, Kids Night's always awesome.
Oh, yeah.
We'll see it this year, but the one last year against Frisco at home, Kids Night, there's just nothing that beats it. It's just,
that was actually amazing. That was my first Blizzard home game. And to see that and run out, shake the kids' hands and, just having that first home game feeling, and then it was against Frisco. It just was an amazing sight to see, and I'm excited for this year's one. I know this year is against Mass, so that's another big-time conference rival. We went 1-1 with them last year. So, when the front office is making these promotions and stuff like that, I don't know if they're tied to a certain team or, they think it's going to be a big game, but I know our fans come out, and that really helps us, let's say we're struggling one drive, we all come back together, the fans are into it, it's a new ball game. That's a great thing about the IFL for sure. Especially
with that Kids Night game, it's nothing like 8,000 screaming kids, because they never, they just have so much energy. They're going to be loud the entire game, screaming at the top of their lungs. Yeah. It's different than, it's nothing like I've ever seen, especially on that night. But week 1 against Frisco on Sunday, 3:05. Tune in on YouTube. That's going to be me. On the YouTube stream, Tyrell's going to be down on the field on the offensive line and figuring out a way to pull out a win against Frisco. Is there anything else you want to mention going into this season? Obviously, a big one ahead for the Blizz.
Just kind of stick with us. It's going to be highs, it's going to be lows, but we hope to come out on top. More times than not, but just come out to the game, support us in the community, and we're going to do the same for y'all. We appreciate our fans, we appreciate our staff, and, we appreciate each other, and the more that we can come together, fans, players, coaches, staff, all as one, is going to help us, on the field, and the more times we get more wins, we can all celebrate together and keep it going for the next week.
Absolutely. So this will just about wrap up our first episode of Talking Blizz. This has been Joey Bonadonna alongside Tyrell Thompson. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, go Blizz.